I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Silly Jedi! Silly Jedi!
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
Hello, what have we here?
Hello there.
At last! Where have you been?
Nice of you guys to drop by.
Ah, good. New acquisitions.
I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this.
Hey everybody, welcome to Star Wars Card Talk. I'm Maurice from Jedi Toy Masters. Hope you guys are having a great week. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. Happy belated Easter and all that good stuff. And yeah, we're back with another exciting drive as we talk Star Wars. So again, I'm Maurice, Jedi Toy Masters. You can find me on Instagram at Jedi Toy Masters. You can find all these episodes on the official Jedi Toy Masters, Star Wars Card Talk account on Instagram. That's at Star Wars Card Talk. And you'll find all the latest episodes on there because these episodes are not just a podcast, they're also in video form. So you can check them out there, or you can check them out on our YouTube channel, Jedi Toy Masters. YouTube playlist is set up for Star Wars Card Talk, and you can check out all our other videos as well. It's been a pretty exciting, it was an exciting week and an exciting weekend if you're a fan of Star Wars, the Vintage Collection. That's right. I'm not talking about the Hasbro Vintage Collection toy line, which, although I am a big fan of that as well. I think whether you're a diehard retro, a vintage Star Wars fan, not the retro line, I'm talking about like the original Kenner, 1978 through 82, 83-ish line of figures and toys and play sets. I'm also a big fan of those. However, I don't have the bankrolls to be collecting that because it gets pretty crazy. So I definitely have a few vintage toys, but I do have a lot more toys from the vintage collection, and I think those are really cool. I think it's funny how it's become basically like the staple of Star Wars toys because they've basically stopped. Hasbro has basically stopped making the regular 3 3/4 inch figures that only have like the 5 points of articulation. They basically stopped making those. I think Solo was the last line that we got. After The Last Jedi performed so poorly as far as toys are concerned, then we got the Solo came out, and I gotta say Solo, not to go on a toy tangent here, but Solo, the Solo toy line is a solid toy line, and I actually happen to have, I would say, I think I have like maybe 80 to 90% of the Solo line that I was able to gather from, crazy Amazon Lightning deals, to finding some figures at Five Below, to finding a bunch of stuff at like a Burlington Coat Factory 2 Christmases ago. It's crazy. It was crazy. I think the only thing that I'm missing from the Solo line, so if anybody's watching or listening and you have this, please hit me up. I've been wanting to get that little walker. I forgot. I think it's the ADTD or something like that. It's this thing right here, and it's the for those of you watching, it's that walker. It looks like the AT-AT, not the AT-AT. It looks like the ATST from the Chicken Walkers from Return of the Jedi, except they're like cut open, and you see them in that great battle scene in Solo when you see Han Solo fighting with the Empire on the Empire side, and he's like running away from the battle, and you see these walkers, these little mini walkers, kind of like deployed. I have not been able to find. I mean, you do see them on eBay and stuff, but they're like just so overpriced. And at this point, I'm actually considering, once we move and we have our own place and I get to set up the Jedi Toy Master headquarters, I actually want to create a display of and open up all of the Solo stuff from the Solo line and just display it and play with it, because those are not like the vintage collection toys. These are kind of like made to be played with. I mean, they're all made to be played with, but you get the idea. So I think that is the only thing missing from my Solo line. I think that, and maybe one other thing. I can't remember off the top of my head. It might be a figure or something, but it's a shame that they stopped making those figures and those lines, because that was a good entryway for a lot of people as far as price point, but they kind of replaced it with the Mission Control, Mission Fleet, I think they call them, which are like these little teeny tiny figures that are, I think, scaled down from when Play School was putting out the Star Wars stuff, which is a lot of stuff. I think I bought a ton of stuff for the Play School line for my boys, and we still have them, and they still play with them. It's a great line. So Mission Fleet is kind of like, and I've talked about this when Mission Fleet was first announced. You can go back in the playlist, or just go back here in the library on wherever you listen to podcasts and check out that episode. But yeah, vintage collection is like the staple now, but that's not the vintage collection that I'm talking about. That's a big intro for this. If you have Disney Plus, you might have noticed that this past weekend, we got a new category in the Star Wars section of Disney Plus, and that's called the Star Wars Vintage Collection. And what you have in that Vintage Collection, which is really, really cool, is they released the original Clone Wars mini episode show, micro series, that originally aired on Cartoon Network, and it was like each episode was, I think, only a few minutes. But if later on, if you bought them on DVD, you were able to play them all together as one long episode. And when you do it that way, there was 2 seasons. Each season was about an hour, so it's like 2 giant 1-hour mini movies of the Clone Wars. And it's interesting because the first half, or the first season of it, basically deals with everything immediately after Attack of the Clones, leading right up to this turning point with Anakin. And then the second half of the season is basically, I guess, like it takes place like right before episode 3. So this is before, granted, this is not canon anymore. They've made it clear, even before Disney came along, as soon as the Clone Wars series came out, they kind of made it clear that this was not canon. Although I remember reading somewhere, I think it might have even been on the StarWars.com website. They had an article. I remember seeing something that they basically said that the Clone Wars series takes place in between season 1 and season 2 of this Clone Wars micro series. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, that's cool. But it really doesn't line up. Like, it really doesn't line up. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the second season of this Clone Wars micro series that don't fit. They don't fit. They don't match up with, first of all, there's no Ahsoka. There's no mention of Ahsoka. And the last episode of the micro series shows when the Separatists attack, and Grievous attacks Coruscant and kidnaps Palpatine. And there's a really cool scene where Mace is like running to try to save him. And right before Grievous gets on a ship and to escape, Mace does this like force move and like literally crushes the chest of Grievous. And that explains why Grievous is like coughing and choking and has like breathing problems in episode 3. I always thought that was really cool, but none of that was included in the Clone Wars series. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a way to kind of finagle these two timelines, these two tellings together. Or it's kind of fun to think that this micro series is kind of like a shorthand version telling, you know, like the version of the Clone Wars that you tell by the campfire, where you leave things out and maybe you exaggerate a few things, you know, but it's still based on what happened, you know. So I like to think of it that way. Like this was a kind of like a quick little retelling. If you don't want to watch the entire series of the Clone Wars, which I totally could understand that because it's long, the first couple of seasons are definitely a slow burn. It really doesn't get good, like really, really good until like the latter seasons. And then it finally, like with the release of them coming back to do that final season, then it really gets bookended really nicely for really like for the characters that we've grown to love, like Ahsoka and Rex. But you kind of already know what's going to happen with Obi-Wan and Anakin. So the series is kind of catering more ending, giving us closure for Ahsoka and Rex, really, and for some of the other clones. But I'd like to think that this micro series is a good way to just get a gist of what the Clone Wars are like leading into Episode 3, and that's kind of how I always viewed it. But anyway, Star Wars Vintage Collection, you get that. You also get, which I think is really cool, is the Ewok movies. They have Caravan of Courage and Battle for Endor on there, and they, from what I understand, look really. I haven't watched them on Disney Plus, but I plan on doing so very soon with the boys. They're kind of cheesy, silly movies, but at the same time, they have some pretty dark and deep stuff in them. So if you want some really great commentary on the Ewok films, I would encourage you to, after you listen to this episode, I would encourage you to hop on over to Blast Point's podcast, and Jason and Gabe do a great job over there, basically breaking down the Ewok movies, and they're hilarious. And that's one of the Star Wars podcasts that I listen to, so I encourage you to check them out. So you get the 2 Ewok movies, you get the micro series Clone Wars, you get also the Ewoks cartoon, all like 2 seasons, both seasons of the Ewoks cartoon. Let me see, what else am I missing? And, oh, of course, and you get the now this was kind of shocking to me that they actually released this. It's the animated short that was part of the holiday special. And it's called The Faithful Wookiee. And they kind of redid the little intro to it, because in the originally it goes right from what's happening in the holiday special, and it kind of like goes right into it. So they kind of had to fix it a little bit, to fix it in post kind of, and make it give it its own little intro so it could stand on its own. I mean, it's only like a 9-minute it's a 9-minute little short. So but it's like an action-packed 9 minutes. The animation is really like wacky. Like it's just so like it's so wacky, and it's doing all these weird things. It kind of reminds me of like that movie One Crazy Summer with John Cusack, and how he creates like this cartoon to promote the restaurant or something, if I remember correctly. And like the cartoon has all these weird movements or whatever. And like all those little like cartoon segments in that movie, that's what the animation of this thing reminds me of. If you know what I'm talking about, please let me know in the comments below, or hit me up on Instagram and say, hey, I remember One Crazy Summer. It was a great movie. And yes, the animation in that is very similar to this Faithful Wookiee animated short. You got Han Solo, you got Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and oh my gosh, C-3PO himself, Anthony Daniels, doing the voices, which is really, really cool. And I couldn't help think like, man, it would be great if, I mean, obviously you can't with Carrie Fisher, but you know, there's a lot of voice actresses out there that can really capture Carrie Fisher's voice, I think, in an animated show. And I just thought, man, it would be great if they really, I mean, Harrison Ford wouldn't do it, but so they would have to get somebody that sounds like Harrison. But I know Mark Hamill would definitely do it. I would love to see an animated version of Shadows of the Empire. Like, let's make Shadows of the Empire canon, and let's make like an like in the style of the Clone Wars cartoon or even Star Wars Rebels, but let's make an animated Shadows of the Empire like mini film, like you know, a film. You can make it into a movie and have it be exclusively on Disney Plus. Like, I think that would be just amazing, and you could put that in the Star Wars Vintage Collection playlist on Disney Plus. I think that would be awesome. I mean, I would love to see, if you can't continue to do a live action Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, the way that we saw him in the last episode of The Mandalorian, how great would it be if we can get like an animated show, like maybe 1 season or 2 seasons of an animated show of like what happens after Return of the Jedi, and like just do a couple seasons, and you could time jump a little bit between seasons, and you know, leading up to like even connected to the sequel trilogy. Whatever, you know, have it lead up right to where you know, what Ben Solo turns. You know, I think you can maybe end it with that. You know, so it's like, yeah, and then he turned, and then boom, you got the First Order on the rise and all that stuff. Like, I think as an animated show, it would, at least, man, it would be so much better. The same way that the Clone Wars filled in so many gaps and really enhanced the prequels, I think an animated show like this would definitely breathe new life to the sequel trilogy, and you could fix a lot of things. You could fix a lot. That's all I'm gonna say. You can fix a lot of things. But Faithful Wookiee, it's a 9-minute animated short. It's actually action-packed. The voice acting is a little weird. Like, you can kind of tell that, first of all, they got Han Solo in there to like literally record. It sounds like he's in the bathroom. It's like echoey. You got him in there to record like 3 things. And you got like Mark Hamill, like super enthusiastic. He's like, what's going on? Like, it's like, you got Carrie Fisher also. They're like all over the place as far as like their levels of excitement and compared to how they look, what they're doing in animated. I think for the time they did the best that they could, and I think they probably really rushed this thing. So it must have been so funny. Like, you know, Carrie Fisher must have been like literally walking to her car in the parking lot at Lucasfilm, and they're like recording her. Oh, say this and say that, and they just literally had all that recording, and then had the animators kind of animate around it, which I think is just hilarious. But they also, it's an interesting story, and you get the first appearance of Boba Fett, voiced by somebody completely different. So that's interesting. And Boba Fett, it's interesting because this is like the first appearance of Boba Fett, but you get so much information about him because you get that he's the best bounty hunter, that he's working for Darth Vader. So that explains why, like, you know, he has that moment with him in Empire where he's like, no disintegrations, because like he knows him, he's worked with him before, specifically, maybe not so much the other bounty hunters, but him specifically. It also brings up a good question. Did Darth Vader just kind of bring all these other bounty hunters in just to make it seem like he was being fair, but he kind of already knew that Boba was going to be the one that he can count on? You know, that's like so interesting. And then you have this whole story about Han getting poisoned with something, and Chewie has to hang him upside down because the blood has to rush to their head. And then the same thing happens to Luke, so Chewie hangs him upside down over his head. And then Boba says he has to go into the town to get the antidote, and Chewie insists that he has to go with him. And Chewie doesn't trust him. And Boba Fett, like, they get to this town, and the town, when you see like all the people in this little city, it's very reminiscent of going back to the Clone Wars micro show. There's an episode in there where Anakin is like walking through Coruscant and he meets up with Padme, and you see all these funky characters and all these weird, the way they do it animated, and it's very reminiscent of that. You just see all these wacky characters and aliens, and he gets the antidote, but he also sends a secret message to Darth Vader, and R2 is able to intercept the message on the Falcon, and they find out that he was just trying to track them to find out where the rebels are for Darth Vader. And when he's found out, Boba escapes, but Luke and Han, you know, are able to get the antidote, and they get better. And And then there's like a cheesy joke at the end where, you know, C-3PO R2's like, well, Chewbacca says that he always suspected that there was something wrong with him, and like, well, how can you tell? And they go, he said he didn't smell right. And they like all laugh, and then you get this weird, like, almost like William Shatner, Captain Kirk intro and outro with these shows. Like, who is that? You know, and then you get the funky, like, Huttese, like, basically saying, like, the end, I guess, or whatever. It is such a wacky 9 minutes. Like, I watched it with my boys. As soon as I saw it on there, that next morning, we sat down Saturday morning. I'm like, you guys got to see this. I put it on, and they were just like, I forgot what one of my sons said, but they were just kind of like weirded out. Like, they were fascinated by it, watching it. And the only thing that they told me at the end, they were like, I'm like, did you like it? And they're like, yeah, we liked it. And they just turned to me and they're like, is this what you watched when you were little? I was just like, well, this came out before I was born. I think I missed this. I missed the holiday special, I think, by like a year, maybe a year and a half. But man, it was, well, I would have been born, so I wouldn't even remember, even if I was an infant. But man, it is out there. It is out there. So if you have Disney Plus, I highly recommend you sit down. It is like, it's the Star Wars equivalent of doing Mystery Science Theater. Just sit down with your family or with some friends. It's definitely worth the watch. It's gonna put a smile on your face. It's gonna make you feel weird. You're gonna go, what? From what I understand, I haven't watched the whole Ewok cartoon. We watched the first one. The boys really dug it, so I think we're gonna continue watching it. From what I understand, season 2 is very wacky, is very out there. But you know, we gotta get through it. We're Star Wars fans. We gotta watch the whole thing. So I just wanted to kind of come on here today and man, let you know, if you have Disney Plus, get on it. If you don't have it, and if you have it, get on it. You gotta watch the Vintage Collection, because it is definitely something to behold. And from what I understand, the Droids cartoon is gonna come on there soon, also at some point. So it's pretty exciting. And then on top of that, next month, May 4th, we got the Bad Batch coming out. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming down the pike. And even if you're a Marvel fan, you know, you got Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then later on, we're gonna have the Loki show, and then later on, we're gonna have the Black Widow movie coming out. So there's a lot of cool stuff as if you're a fan of the comics, of Star Wars, Marvel, all that good stuff. We recently just had, you know, got the 4-hour cut of Justice League, or if you're into that, you know, that's really cool. But anyway, I'm Maurice, Jedi Toy Masters, hoping that you have a great week. And if you did watch any of this wacky Vintage Collection stuff from Disney Plus, hit me up in the comments and let me know what you thought. What was your favorite? What'd you think? Let me know on Instagram at Jedi Toy Masters. Check out some of our other videos. And guys, remember,
The Force will be with you, always.